This is the Curious Pundits Podcast, hosted by Kevin and Emmanuelle. They explore bits of everything through thoughtful conversations, prioritizing curiosity over conclusions, and they thank you for joining them. Now, on to the podcast.
Hi, and welcome back. My name is Emmanuelle.
My name is Kevin.
And we are the Curious Pundits. Two people, two digital marketers that simply are curious about stuff that we like to talk about. Today's topic is the ethics of emerging technologies. And as the previous episodes, Kevin chose this topic as well. Kevin, what did you have in mind what was going through your mind when you decided on this topic?
Surveillance pricing.
Surveillance raised one brow, pricing raised the other eyebrow also. So do tell.
You've heard of it, right?
I'm not sure I understand exactly, so please.
Corporations are selling us stuff through our phones and our browsers. And because apps bleed information, for lack of a better word, they know a lot about us. So two people can buy the same thing at the same time and pay different prices.
Should I put my tinfoil hat on for this one or?
No, this is for real.
I know. No, I'm just kidding. I know it happens. Even right now, we can do a live experiment. Even on my computer, go incognito or anything like that. In Canada, you're in the US. But yeah, go ahead.
But it's based on what zip code you live in. They've even caught, and I think it was McDonald's, charging people more on payday than they charged them the day before payday, because the McDonald's app is able to figure out when payday is based on your cycle, if you will, of activities and stuff. It's a pretty insidious practice, and it's getting more and more common. But that's not the end of it. That's just what was on my mind when I thought of this topic.
Capitalism at its best.
Boy, that's a topic all by itself. Can I segue off to the side and I'll get back to the main topic in a minute?
As we usually do. This podcast is essentially a topic and consisting
a bunch of segues.
Yeah.
So we've all heard the idea that capitalism progresses through creative destruction.
Yes.
That idea comes from a guy named Joseph Schumpeter. Joseph Schumpeter wrote a book called, God,
you
what
mentioned
was it called?
Yeah.
I just finished reading it. I can't remember the title, but it's The Theory of Economic Development.
Yes.
Now, nowhere in his book does he say capitalism and competitive markets go together. Like, he never says that. But that idea permeates everything he said. Like, he could not even imagine a world in which a corporation knows so much about you that they could charge you different prices at different times. That concept was not even foreign to his mind. It didn't even exist. To a certain extent, surveillance pricing is not capitalism at its finest. It's capitalism at its worst.
Not fun. I think it was always there. It's just we didn't have the technology.
Yeah, the technology didn't exist to allow us to do that.
Even back in the day, let's say 20 years ago, where you would go to a different city. I'm from Romania and I'm from Bucharest, its capital, and things were more expensive just because it was the capital. That's one example.
Yeah, but everybody in the capital would pay the same price for the same thing on the same day. The price might change next week. Two people in line for the same thing didn't pay different prices, the way that does, in fact, happen today. But it's far beyond this. Not only do we have surveillance pricing, we have surveillance like everywhere. Cameras in crime districts. And we have these for legitimate reasons, and they serve beneficial purposes, but there's ethical considerations that we never talk about. I
Theoretically,
shouldn't say never, but almost never.
I think overall surveillance didn't decrease the crime rate that much.
It has in some areas. I think the most surveilled city on earth is London. And apparently you cannot walk around London without being on camera. And they have probably more than one like control center where they're monitoring the videos, and they do catch people in the act of committing crimes and are able to respond more quickly. And according to them, it's working for them.
According to them, but I have friends in
Yeah.
London and they tell me otherwise. And we know for sure, we've seen them online, that even if you pull up your phone in London, somebody on a scooter or something's going to snatch it up and run away with it. Not to mention the others more horrendous crimes. And there's a bunch of YouTubers that do that for a living. They hunt the people. Topic for another conversation. So I'm not sure that ad actually had an impact on its purpose, but I know for sure that it made somebody rich because incalling the cameras, maintenance, recurring
Oh, yeah.
income,
It's an
cost
entire
a lot of money,
industry.
right? So somebody made money. So it had probably an economic impact overall, but its purpose, I don't believe so. But again,
It's not just surveillance, like gene splicing, and probably one of the most egregious examples of, in my mind, ethical considerations is a practice that Monsanto does relative to some of the seeds that they sell. So they will genetically engineer some seed, some aspect of a seed, and that seed has certain characteristics which is advantageous in some way. And if a truck with a bunch of Monsanto seeds on it drives down the highway and the wind blows some of those seeds onto the field of another farmer, it's not the case that Monsanto has accidentally contaminated that farmer's field with seeds he didn't buy and didn't want. It's the case that farmer is now in patent infringement and can be sued. So this is an ethical consideration of a technology, gene splicing, that we didn't really anticipate. And we haven't really done a good job in terms of what are the laws around this, in my opinion. Monsanto obviously disagrees. They think the laws are great, right? I personally disagree with that particular one. For 10,000 years, if you did something like that, you contaminated their field and you had to clean it up. Now you're in patent infringement.
Because they have the lawyers and they have all the
They have the
mechanisms
lawyer.
and everything else. Yeah, definitely something to think about. I don't want to be in that position, and it's hard to fight somebody like that.
Hmm.
They also have their own wars to deal with. There's plenty of people who have publicly expressed the disagreement with this. I think this falls under a different topic and not necessarily the ethics of the emerging technology, but the ethics of the world, the ethics of business, the ethics of corporations, and how much we allow businesses, corporations, entities, even people to exercise their control over us, and what mechanisms do we have to fight against. Usually things happen when the knife, îți ajunge cuțitul la os, is in Romania, the knife hits your bone, basically. And in most cases, it doesn't, especially in North America. People aren't like starving or anything like that. And homelessness usually is correlated with mental health and drug consumption. So probably you need to fix those first before the homelessness, in my opinion, the basics. But in other places, people can starve, and at one point they revolt. That's my opinion. But interesting topic, and I didn't thought about when I read the topic. I didn't ask you more questions. I thought you're referring maybe to, again, coming back to the AI and the use of AI.
Oh,
and
yeah, all of the above.
all
Yeah,
of the above,
surveillance
I think.
pricing was simply what was on my mind because that's a capability enabled by the fact that we all have smartphones now.
Yes.
But it's by no means limited to just surveillance pricing. In fact, even the concept of gene splicing, the only technological endeavor in which I know the people who invented it said, whoa, stop. We need to really seriously talk about the ethical considerations of this, is in fact gene splicing through a technology called CRISPR-Cas9. That particular technology was developed by two biologists. I'm not sure exactly what their field of study is, but an American named Jennifer Doudna, I think, and a French woman named Emmanuelle Charpentier. And they co-invented this thing just in their labs, an academic project. And when people started using it, they actually said, whoa, put the brakes on this. We got to figure out what the limits are in terms of being able to manipulate DNA with precision.
There's actually a movie, I think it's called Rampage, which is an action movie, I think, with The Rock. But
I don't know
it talks about the technology and does a good job of describing it and potentially.
But for the most part, we just ignore those considerations.
I would argue that out of all the emerging technologies, that we should spend more on understanding it, learning about it, investing in it, because that's basically what will cure cancer sooner, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. But it also has the potential to produce a horrific pathogen that can wreak enormous damage. It goes both ways. Every new invention can be used for a variety of purposes.
Like a hammer.
Yeah. Or gunpowder. Like the Chinese invented gunpowder and thought that fireworks were cool. And that's where they stopped.
And then I think it was a Hungarian who industrialized it and weaponize it and brought it to the Ottoman Empire. I think, as far as I remember. Ethics of emerging technologies. So where would you want to start with?
Oh, man.
We're already like 10 minutes in. Where would you like to start? But still.
I know why we're here, and I do not know how to not be here, but much of the world runs on a legal tradition known as English common law, because England was the dominant empire. And in English common law, unless it's expressly forbidden, go for it. If it turns out that what you're doing is not good, we'll deal with that later. Laws will be passed. It will become prohibited. But in the meantime, just go for it. And what's happening is that the technological innovations that we're just going for it with are happening faster than the legal system can stay up with it.
Significantly.
Right. So we have all of these interesting and exciting technologies that can be used for a variety of purposes, both exceptionally good and exceptionally bad. And the legal statutes are just not able to keep up. So AI, in fact, this is like my favorite be careful what you ask for scam. This happened when AI was in its infancy just a couple of years ago. So an American corporation had I don't know if it was a division or a wholly owned subsidiary in Singapore. And the general manager of the Singapore operation was invited into an executive conference call about some topic, went into the call. The CEO was there, the CFO was there, and they're chatting about this company initiative that was going to be done or spearheaded by the Singapore office, and it was going to cost $200,000 a month or whatever. And they just wanted to give this guy a heads up and make sure he was aware, and the vendor is this and blah, blah, blah. So 6 months into it, he's back at headquarters, and he asked the CFO, well, I'm just curious, what's the status on Project XYZ that we're spending all this money on? And the guy's, what project? And it turns out the entire thing was a scam. And I think it was more than one video call, but in the video calls, everybody except him was an AI avatar. And they were just siphoning off 200 grand a month from this company using advanced technology. It was just straight up theft, right? So it's not like the laws prohibit straight up theft, but there was no concept of, is this for real? Should I check with the CFO? Because like he was in the call, right?
There's also solutions for this, and I'm working actually on a project to verify the credential. Back in the day, I read this somewhere. I read it initially many years ago. There was a person whose job is to verify that the king is the king, because most people didn't knew how the king looked. You didn't knew who he was, but you knew that person, the agent, and I forgot the name. So we trust these all sorts of entities, government, private, and all those things. But the solution here is blockchain for sure, and different solutions built on the blockchain. But here I am giving the solution to a problem that is not mine and nobody asks for it.
Yeah, but we're pundits. So that's what we do.
Yeah,
we offer
we have
unsolicited opinions about things we know something, but not much about.
Yes. And usually these type of things help put the stress on the system to become better, to develop new security protocols, sometimes make even a bad experience because I'm tired of how many 2FAs, logins, and all kinds of information I need just to simply send an email or anything like that. But hey, the consequences of not doing that
can be severe.
So I prefer to do that. I prefer to sometimes not have a payment go through from my credit card and then spend 30 minutes to an hour just saying that I am me, and that verifying over the phone that it's really me by just saying my birthday or something like that, which is not the case anymore, but it used to be just a few years before.
A minimal amount of information was enough to verify your identity.
Sooner rather than later, the solutions.
But autonomous vehicle, somebody, and specifically, I got to think of the guy's name. He's a well-known pundit, Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. So he mentioned he lives somewhere in New York, and he's a part of like a group that meets in the park to do yoga.
Okay.
And he said, nobody's really thought, but when the number of cars on the road are mostly autonomous vehicles, nothing prevents my yoga group from just taking over the street, because the cars are programmed to stop and not hit us, right? So if we just move in the middle of the street and set up our yoga, the cars will just stop and we will completely stop traffic in that section of the city.
If you're willing to deal with the consequences, because there's
presumably there will be some kind of consequences, and there's rules against doing this and blah, blah, blah. But this is an example of a technology enables some weird behavior that like the people who developed the technology just never thought of. And sooner or later, someone's going to want to do that, probably not within the context of practicing yoga, but a protest of some sort.
Yeah, most likely.
Oh, sooner or later, it's going to happen.
Speaking of self-driving cars, I can't wait for the day that they'll come here in Toronto as well, because most people can't drive, and not to mention Uber. Have you ever been in a self-driving car?
No, and I'm not like adverse to the idea, but I'm not like, oh my God, I got to go find one. Like I'm on neither side. I'm on neither end of that spectrum.
I think closest to it, Texas has a few cities that have.
They have some in Austin.
Okay.
Maybe elsewhere, but I know they're in Austin. Austin has a big festival show every year called South by Southwest. And I've heard people who have been to South by Southwest say, oh yeah, while I was in Austin, I took a self-driving car and it was fun or whatever.
Fun, yeah. That'll be the norm. So what are some ethical considerations
of self-driving cars?
Yes.
Imagine that two self-driving cars have an accident. They like literally run into each other due to a technology failure. Who's at fault? The people in the car are not the drivers. In fact, the people in the car may not even be required to have driver's licenses. So the insurance companies are going to argue this in front of the judge, presumably, but what are the rules here? We don't know. I mean, at least I don't know. Maybe some people know. And then probably the worst one. So we have this, I'm going to say, bad habit. And I don't really have a better phrase, although I'd like to find a better phrase. But the engineers who design some technology design a technology that they've tested on themselves. And this has resulted in people who are not like them. The technology doesn't work so well. So the first example that I've ever heard of was way back in the 80s when they had like voice interactions. I think it was General Motors, and it was some kind of service you could have two-way speaker conversations. But before you could get to a person, you had to go through like an automated voice interaction type gateway. And no one had ever thought to test it with a deep South American accent. So when they rolled this thing out in Alabama, it didn't work, right? Because the automated AI couldn't understand what these people were saying, right? So automatic soap dispensers have not dispensed soap to people who have dark skin because none of the people who worked on it and tested it had dark skin. And self-driving cars also don't see dark-skinned people all the time. So sooner or later, a self-driving car is going to run over somebody who is black or from Southern India, or you get the idea. And then, of course, there's the issue of liability. A person who is a passenger obviously is not liable. Who owns the car? Is it the manufacturer of the car? Et cetera, et cetera. Who is responsible for that death? Or hopefully just injury. But this is an example of we haven't really thought this through.
Coming back to the common law, English common law, many other parts of the world, at least up until at one point, live by the Hammurabi Code. And I think I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes. The engineer who will build a bridge will live under it with his family for, I don't know how many years, I think it was a year or something like that. So it needs to be consequences, and it needs to be tied to a specific person. That will for sure put a stop or a pause, or at least slow down the emergence of anything new, which can be a little bit frustrating, of course, because I know, coming from a bureaucratic country where you can't do anything, essentially, even a lemonade stand.
Everything's prohibited unless it's specifically allowed.
Yeah, so even
Like
a lemonade stand.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for cops to arrest old women who sell like some vegetables from their garden or stuff like that. You see it on the news because that's the way the law works. Where I think that's obviously the extreme, but I think it should make it more tied to an ownership, essentially. And for better or worse, fortunately, the US system has worked. What's her name? Elizabeth, I forgot her name. With the one which had that technology that with a pinch of blood, she could tell you how much.
Oh, Elizabeth Holmes, yeah.
Elizabeth Holmes. She had her run, and now I wouldn't trade places with her, not for.
Yeah, but that was just straight up fraud. Like their machine didn't work.
Yeah, she's paying the consequences. The other guy, FBR, right? Bankman-Fried.
Sam Bankman-Fried. Same, straight up fraud.
Although, I don't know about Elizabeth Holmes, but if this guy knew about the technology, he knew about how it operates. He was a developer. He knew some stuff. They paid the price. So there were consequences for them. I wish maybe a little bit more consequences for even bigger, even other aspects. Where I'm going with this, software updates. Oh man, aren't they killing me? And I have friends who work in different corporations, and just a minor software update can shut down or pause a system that's resulting in paying like fines or not being able to deliver the data that people are paying for in time just because of a minor software update. So I think these type of things should be more, not necessarily controlled is not the word, but should have more consequences or should cost more. You want to make a software update, a UX UI, coming back to one of the previous episodes. You just do an update just because you need to justify your job. So let's say we need a new UX or you need a new system. Do we actually need it, or is just you justifying your money? If you want to enable that, then it should come at a price, perhaps. Each software update should cost the company, Apple, Microsoft, and all the other Android, Google should cost money when you're making these big changes as well. So I think that's important. I'm
I
deviating again
completely agree.
from the topic of the conversation, but it's important because it's okay to make updates, but not at the scale it went out of hand, essentially. You can't even install something without going like 2-3 other places, and something as simple as listening to music on my computer in 2025, it's a pain. I don't know how to listen to music on my computer other than going to YouTube or Spotify. Sometimes I like to use Spotify because I discover some music that YouTube's algorithm wouldn't recommend me otherwise. But what do I use? Back in the day, I used to have Winamp. You tune in Winamp, you drop in the folder and hit play. Right now, you need to create this like IKEA or Lego. So that's one of my frustrations, and I think there should be consequences based on that. But this is not necessarily about ethics of emerging technologies. I'm going to self-drive back to AI, the AI component, the LLMs. And no, I'm going to go back to what you initially said about even the McDonald's example and how they can figure out when you get paid so they can charge you more. Because probably most people on their pay, they treat themselves with a excellent meal at McDonald's, Big Mac. I don't know anyone who doesn't like food from McDonald's. I'm not saying that they eat there or that they say it's healthy, but I never met anyone who doesn't actually like it because it tastes amazing. It's also that other apps are deliberately releasing some data to other, not the apps themselves, but the entities, the companies that own them, resell the data and share that. Not necessarily Kevin or Emmanuelle, but these young gentlemen from this segment, from this cohort, are usually we see an increase in their income, money coming in their account on the 5th of each month, stuff like that. This type of information are shared. And it's not always people, I like to think that people are aware, but realistically, most people aren't. So where's the fine line of the ethics? And now I'm thinking about user experience, even when you install a new software and you get that privacy policy and all those things, terms and conditions that you would read through 30 pages of babbling and all those things. I think that helps us obviously with progress, right? With learning more. Who would have installed a new software if they would have to read all those things, right?
Yeah.
Before. But I think, and technology allows us, for us, the users, to have more control over as well. So I think that can play also
to
in
a
our
certain extent. So my desktop system runs Windows 10. I have a laptop that runs Windows 11, and I'm seeing more and more complaints about the surveillance built into Windows 11, to the point where apparently Microsoft is preparing some kind of a response, although I have no idea what it is. But in order for us, shall we say, poor consumers, to have a say in how some technologies impact our lives, we've got to hit some serious critical mass. Like, apparently, there are communities of people who are helping each other migrate from Windows 11 to Linux because it's, in their mind, it's that bad. And Microsoft is like, whoa, this is a problem.
Definitely is. And even I'm on a Mac, so it's a little bit, it's less than Windows, but it's becoming an issue as well. And it's becoming a painful process to have all these weird stuff that we didn't even realize. That when I bought my Mac, for example, I didn't do the proper research in the idea of what actually you cannot do, you won't think about. But I have an M2 chip, and I went with a 13-inch MacBook Pro in 2022. because I like the 13-inch, I didn't want the bigger one. But it turns out that this one only supports one extra monitor. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Okay, but why didn't... I'm assuming that most people don't connect to extra monitors, but for what I'm doing every once in a while, I actually need that extra monitor. For example, when I'm recording this podcast, for example, I would like to have a third screen that I can connect to my... I would like to have the possibility to connect my external screen that I use for the teleprompter where the camera sits on, so I can actually look in the mirror. I try to do some stuff, some improvisation using the laptop's monitor. It doesn't work as intended, but you get the idea. But this is a podcast, this is not therapy, so we're not talking about what's frustrating us, but maybe we should do something like that. Let me go back to the topic and actually ask you, what's the biggest threat at the moment that you consider? And you notice how we strictly didn't go outside of North America for the moment, because when you're talking about surveillance and you're talking about other countries, there's a completely different ball.
Oh yeah, it's across the spectrum. Like right. China is more of a surveillance state than the United States is, and the European Union is less because the legal systems are structured in those ways.
I come from Romania. The Secret Service used to be, it was the worst next to the KGB. So their surveillance went to a whole different level, and I can only imagine how that would look like with today's technology available.
You know, the joke about why ex-Stasi officers made the best taxi drivers?
No.
So in the 1990s, like Germany reunified. So this was a popular
I think I know
joke.
why.
Because you only have to give them your name. They already know your address.
Yeah.
So Europe was divided since the end of World War II until the 90s, like rigidly by what Winston Churchill called the Iron Curtain. So there were two completely different concepts of how much surveillance was acceptable. But within the European Union, there's the Data Privacy Directive, and it's fairly strict about what data can be collected and in what ways it can be used. So that was my reference of less so in the European Union. But I do think one of the greatest threats is the way that information that is collected about us is being collected and used. Companies, have you heard of a company called Better Health?
Yes.
Apparently, part of their business model is they sell their metadata.
Tell people that don't know what Better Health is.
Better Health is an online therapy company. And the concept, I think, is great. Like, I'm a big believer in therapy. Like, everybody should have a good therapist. A good therapist is someone you pay to be a good listener. They help you think through things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So just make it, it's not us, okay? We know that you like...
Oh, no, it's everybody, including us.
Oh, no, but it's not us. We're not the therapists. The podcast...
Yeah, we are not therapists.
Yeah.
And Better Health is a online platform for matching people who want therapy with therapists through the internet, so you can get a better match independent of geographical constraints.
Yes.
However, part of their business model is they sell their metadata. Now, apparently it's been made as anonymous as possible, but they'll know that in the city of Hamilton, so many people are using online therapy at the following times. And that information is of value to certain people. I'm not sure exactly who buys it or why, but just the fact that people buy it creeps me out. And then
advertising
right now,
could be one of them. I can tell
that?
you for sure. Advertising as an ad man, if I know that people use at a certain time, then it can influence a lot. I can set up my budgets to put more at different times and all those things, and can save me a lot of money and make me a lot of money, right?
And there's
all comes down to advertising at the end of the day. What's the goal?
I'm sure it does. But there's another one right now that I think is a glaring example. So the DNA testing company 23andMe is in bankruptcy protection. And apparently they're being liquidated. Things are being sold off in order to raise money to make the creditors as whole as they can. And one of the things that's being sold is the DNA database. Now, when people signed up with 23andMe and agreed with how their DNA could and could not be used, there was a clause in that agreement that says, in the event that we go bankrupt or the company is ever sold, we may lose control over that. So now people's DNA is in the process of being auctioned off to the highest bidder. What are they going to do with it? No clue.
I want to laugh because I'm sure that it was very explicitly said in one of those 200 pages of terms and conditions that people read and agreed.
Absolutely. So this is the stuff, but there's all kinds of, like, these surveillance technologies, I believe, have productive uses, but they also have uses that are, in my opinion, clear overreach. I'll give you two examples. And I actually saw these examples discussed on a television show many years ago. So you're a parent, you have a 15-year-old daughter, and you'll get there, right? And your daughter comes to you with a proposal. And the proposal is she wants to wear this bracelet that Levi's, the blue jeans company, has asked her to wear, and they're going to pay her $50 a month to wear it. And the reason they want her to wear it is Levi's not only wants to know what she does buy, they want to know when she's in the store, what did she think of buying and not buy? Because they want to use that information and feed it back to their product development people in terms of this is feedback for what products we need to develop. So if she picked up a pair of Wrangler jeans and then put them down, and then picked up a pair of some other brand jeans, tried them on and put them back, and then picked up a third pair of jeans, tried them on and bought them, they want to know that. And it's worth $50 a month per person for them to know that. So as a parent, do you let your daughter do this?
I don't want to, it's easy to give yes or no answer, but the reality is always different. So I'm inclined to say no. I would rather
Most parents would, but all my friends are doing it. It's $50 a month. All of my friends are doing this.
I'll
How
pay
can
her
you say
100.
no?
I'll pay you $100 and I'll get you a cooler bracelet.
Okay, let's go to the other extreme.
I have solutions, remember. So I'm not a good example. That's why I'm thinking the algorithm is like they have a note there saying don't use Emmanuelle's data because it's not relevant. I'm jumping from one thing to the next and all those things, but that's just me. I'm one in very few.
So now I want to jump to the opposite extreme, which is you have an elderly parent. They're in the early stages of dementia. And once a month, they wander off, and it takes you a few hours to find them. You can get a little device the size of a grain of sand, inject it in their shoulder, and you will know exactly where they are all the time. However, unbeknownst to you, approximately every other time that they sneak off, they go next door, and the next door neighbor takes them to a bar, and he has a few drinks, and you, for whatever reason, as their child, you disapprove of this because of some health condition or whatever. If you put the chip in them, they will lose the ability to do that. Maybe they go to the racetrack. Maybe they go to the local bar, right? Is that trade-off worth it? Is knowing where they are all the time because of their early stage dementia, does that override the invasion of their privacy? Because they don't want you to know they're going to the track or the bar or whatever.
Excellent question and excellent topic. If I'm to answer honestly, because that's what I'm thinking about, I need to put myself first and understand that if I'm going down to that route, it's not sane for me, and I'm speeding up my own dementia. I've seen this happening recently with a mother who sent her daughter, and I understand, obviously, concerns are not absurd, with an Uber. And she was constantly monitoring the telephone when the package was about to be dropped off. And I understand on one point. But then I asked, how old is she? Oh, 19. Okay. And I saw what kind of life that means. I understand the dangers. I'm well aware. I read the news and all those things. I live in Canada, and unfortunately, Romania, from this perspective, is safer than Canada and most of Canada and most of the US. But is that even a life? Because what stops me from just monitoring it for their own sake and becoming an obsession, having this becoming an obsession, and call the elderly parent 3 times a day. Why did you go there? Why did you buy? Oh, they did this, they do that. I'm in that position as well, right? My mom's older. Fortunately, she still has most of her thoughts together, and I wish for this to be the longest. But in many ways, she's more aware and more adapted to the new emerging technologies than I am, because everyone is forcing people to pay their utility bills, for example, from their apps using their phones. I don't do that. My mom does, so she knows more than I do. She's getting the scam calls that we get them all over the world. She's having to deal with all these things that I don't even know how to deal with. I gave her at one point a laptop, and speaking about updates, while she was asking what's happening, why does it do that? Didn't we do this yesterday also? And it's hard. It's idiotic, essentially. It's hard to explain when you look at things the way they are. You say, yeah, it's idiotic. I don't have any other explanation. But would I want to go there? Am I becoming actually that control freak, that I'm becoming the state-owned?
Yeah, I get it. And you are about to have a child, and your perspective on this question is guaranteed to be influenced by that. There's no way around that.
Yes.
But all of these technologies with a form of overreach potentially built in, they all have positive uses. I'm part of a group, a Where Are You app with my brother and sister-in-law. No big deal, but if I'm ever like in need, I can open the app, hit SOS, and they get an alert, and vice versa.
Yeah.
It's never happened, but potentially it could.
And there's all kinds of devices
older people can wear. My brother, just to catch up and see what's happening, I jump in the app so that I can assess whether he's likely to be busy or not. And I base that strictly on where I think he is, right? So I look in the app and say, oh, yeah, he's likely to be free. And then I call him. Oh, he's likely to be busy. And then I don't. So this is I would call it a productive use of this surveillance capability. So they all have uses, but they also all have abuses.
I like that one. They all have uses. They also have abuses. And I tend to be focus more on the abusive part. Probably because I'm a digital marketer. So I probably use some days even 30 to 40 tools, different tools that have their own thing going on, their own way of doing their own UX, their own updates. So I'm in front of this more than most people. But I think the regular folks also started to feel frustrated. But again, this is not about frustration. That's a different topic that we had in mind, and probably we'll record it next. But the ethics of emerging technologies is definitely something I even think my mind is set to come up with a solution, but I don't think that's the purpose. We shouldn't come with the solution, but as you said, to be pundits and give our own opinion, walk through some scenarios and do some exercises as you did earlier that actually put me to think a little bit, put my mind to think a little bit. And I hope all of our listeners get something out of it. And maybe just to raise the question, okay, what now? Is this okay? Even if you're asking yourself this, because I can only think of where this potentially can go if just left by itself. And with the use of AI, the good thing is AI can also empower smaller entities, smaller businesses, people who traditionally wouldn't have access to do many things. But not all people see it this way. And we burn through a lot of money and consume a lot of energy just to ask ChatGPT something we already know, or I can't even think of something stupid, but usually that's what most queries are about. I'm not in that cohort.
AI has positive uses, but it's also going to turbocharge scamming people out of money.
And solutions for validation, I'm going to Google.
At the risk of giving advice, my advice to anybody who's listening is if you don't know them, you don't know them, right? And if you do know them, maybe it's not them. I'm very skeptical of that kind of stuff. I'm the kind of guy, everybody gets unsolicited text messages that have nothing to do with them. Hi, it's Meg. I'm going to be in town next Thursday. Care to play golf? And I used to say, sorry, you got a wrong number. And then there'd be this conversation, and who are you? And let's chat. And I got to the point where I would get like 2 or 3 of these a week. And finally, as soon as I get one, I just block the number.
Yeah.
Like I don't even respond to them anymore because they were too frequent. And the frequency of them has dropped off significantly since I started doing that.
Yeah, because you're in the system. So once you responded and went through the conversation, they said, oh, okay, this guy here, here's our cohort, cohort that we are targeting essentially. And potentially you realize it sooner rather than later. Some people lose a lot of money because at the end of the day, they just want your money. They want to start a conversation. You don't realize it looks so realistic or seems genuine, but at the end of the day, I'll be in town. You get to know them. And God knows if you're somebody lonelier, just by yourself, they target these people. And about ethical consideration, I do just remember a recent topic I saw over the news. We'll probably drop a link somewhere in the show notes about some scams that were going on. And initially people learned about them on Facebook. So the scammers ran meta advertising with Canada's Premier Mark Carney saying that they enable this new cryptocurrency coin and that they're giving people money who sign up for the program. It was all deep fake AI generated, right?
Yeah.
And Facebook, Meta allowed for this to run on their platform. And people sign up, they put their information, and that's what they need. And they got a call from, I don't know where they were, those people somewhere East Europe, and then they drain them for their life savings and stuff like that. That's an ethical consideration as well, given the fact that Facebook, Google, their advertising company, they're B2B, businesses to businesses. Their business is to sell advertising to other businesses. Okay, and they have the platforms to do so where people live. That's it.
Well, Meta brings up a example that just blows my mind. And I don't know exactly who inside Meta they are, but whoever they are, thinks it's okay for minors to interact with sexually explicit chatbots. Like they view this as an opportunity to sell ads. And I'm like, geez, this is too much for me.
I don't think I heard that, and I don't even want to explore that part right now, at least, to go in.
Hopefully they changed their mind. Hopefully the backlash on that idea was so strong that they backed down.
Hopefully, yeah. But not even go that far, but even something simple as this. Do you think Meta could have done a better job preventing this? Yes, probably. I run a lot of Meta advertising, and I know that have clients who spend hundreds of thousands per year or per month even, then and have some issues and their ads get suspended and all those things, something straight up. Whereas somebody else with a brand new account can run scam videos like that for $5 a day budget or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think here is where these big guys can do a better job. Talking about the European privacy laws, they're in place specifically for these big players, for the Metas, the Googles, the Apples, and all those things. But at the end of the day, the end consumer pays the price because it created a very bad experience from users' perspective. I read sports, and if I wouldn't have an ad blocker, and even with the ad blocker, you get all the pop-ups in the world, and sometimes it takes over that you need to accept the terms and conditions and all those things, which at the end of the day creates a frustrating experience. And I've seen more and more people complaining about it, and even I myself not simply making the conscious decision of not visiting a site, even results from Google or ChatGPT, if I see like too many unuseful notifications or pop-ups and all those things. So that's something that I choose to do. Obviously, I'm the outlier always. I'm not a good example, but I can probably live pretty good without accessing that website, without accessing that piece of information, and I wouldn't go in opening up the data security. So not the use of data in itself, but also how many companies store in our data essentially, and what measures they take to secure that data. And sometimes it's unbelievable how accessible things are. But that's a topic for another conversation. I think, Kevin, you mentioned at one point that you had some experience in IT and security. So you probably...
Yeah, I used to do it for a living. That was like in a prior life, metaphorically speaking.
I understand. Yeah, sure. But yeah, there's probably some stories you could share in another episode, probably. Any last thoughts, a message for our audience? What would you like them to remember after these episodes? The ethics of emerging technologies. I'm just
I don't
coming
know,
back
man.
on
It's such a broad topic, and I mean, it really is none of the phrases that come to mind really do justice to what I want to say, but it's like this unknown frontier of technology and law, and we are not going to slow down in order to figure this out. We're just not going to. That's not our way, right? So we're just going to blaze ahead, and then damage will be caused because all new technologies create damage, and we're going to be reactive and figure things out after the fact as best we can.
But be vigilant at least, and
be vigilant. And I gave some advice a few minutes ago, although I've already forgotten what it was. But the other piece of advice is if you get one of those weird messages of, "Hi, it's Meg. Can we play golf on Tuesday?" Don't feel shy about just blocking her and deleting it. Like, it's probably not a person named Meg.
Don't be the good Samaritan and let Meg know that she got the wrong number, because it's dangerous. And even in some countries, just by replying, you get charged.
That could happen. Yeah.
And if you call back or stuff like that, you don't realize that it's a code for sending money or stuff like that. Not that much anymore. It's a topic for a different conversation altogether, but this can be very complicated, and it all starts by being a nice person and wanted to say that person got the wrong number. So be vigilant. Always ask yourself why, if anything, and if it sounds too good to be true, most of the time it is. And also try to enjoy it and embrace it, because at the end of the day, self-driving cars are a good thing. At the end of the day, self-checkout is a good thing, in a sense that I'm hoping for the day. And this should totally be possible right now, where I think Amazon proposed and even experimented in some places in the US with the Whole Foods ones. When you go into the store, you just buy your things, put it in your basket, and the moment you go out of the store, that's where they scan it, because they have the IDs, the digital IDs of all the products that are in your bag, and you get charged by your credit card that's already on system. So you shouldn't theoretically even go through the process of the cashier.
Actually,
checkout,
this brings
the
up
checkout process.
another like comment about surveillance of modern technologies. Like people have legitimate major concerns about other people knowing too much about their personal habits. If you don't want people, whoever they are, to know about your personal habits, don't use credit or debit cards. Like, period, end of discussion, right? You leave a trail which the payment processor knows in detail. And is that information going to stay within them? Now, for what it's worth, I use both, as do most people. And the idea that I would stop using them is, I got to go back to carrying cash in my wallet. Yeah, I don't think so. But just be aware that you're leaving a very detailed trail. This is secondhand. This is a story from my brother. My brother met him. This guy had been charged with a crime, convicted of a crime, sent to prison. And apparently a relative of this guy, his sister, his brother, just kept digging in. And they found an electronic record that they were in a different city at the time of the crime. Took this electronic, it was like a receipt or something, took this electronic record back to the judge, and they were like, oh my God, we made a mistake. And they let the guy out of prison. Wow. So the story is, every time this guy walks by a security camera, he waves at it, and he keeps all of his receipts, and he tapes them in a scrapbook, and he keeps them all. It's like, it saved my ass once. Who knows? Maybe it'll do it again.
Too much to discuss. It's been a pleasure always. We are the Curious Pundits. My name is Emmanuelle.
My name is Kevin.
CuriousPundits.com is our website where you can like, follow, or send us a message. Tell us what you think about the podcast. Until the next episode.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like the podcast, please like, subscribe, and tell others. Visit CuriousPundits.com to learn more, and stay tuned for the next episode.